Hello, everyone. I'm, I'm Luke. I'm graduating from high school on Thursday, and I will be attending UC Santa Cruz come fall, where I'll hopefully be sitting in an air-conditioned room and studying politics all day. Thank you. For the past 18 years of my life, and for only 2 of which I've been able to enjoy relatively coherent thought, I've been struggling with the question of what it means to be a Christian. Now, sometimes I do believe that there is a God. Other days I think that there's something just binding us together, and that's what God is. And at other times, I do believe that the idea of God is a rather interesting proposition. Again, thanks. But what I've consistently come to believe is that one's idea or belief in a God is not what should determine one's ability to claim identity as a Christian. In fact, I think that the time has come to change our perspective and alter how we define the act of being a Christian. For too long, someone's Christianity has been gauged by how well they complete a laundry list of good Christian things to do. Going to church, memorizing the Bible, and adhering to a moral code that they believe God wants them to follow. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing intrinsically bad about these things. But for me, the issue arises when people stop thinking about their faith and just follow along. The primary message of my faith, at least, is compassion, and when the Christian laundry list is put above that call to compassion, it inevitably leads us down a path where we forget to care for one another. Sadly, far too substantial a portion of the Christian community has turned a blind eye to this call. Rather than practicing compassion for all, they have chosen to accept a different moral code, one they've been told is correct, that authorizes the practice of compassion for some and judgment for others. This is not because they are hateful or discriminatory or bigoted by nature. In fact, they rarely are. Rather, this is because they are victims of a religion that has been and continues to be used by a system of power that profits from division and hate. This is the Christianity that persecutes. And this is the Christianity that endorses Islamophobia across the globe. And this is the same Christianity that causes so many of our gay, lesbian, and transgender brothers and sisters to hate themselves because they have been told that God hates them, that their community hates them, and that once they die, they are going straight to hell. And it's no wonder that these teens commit suicide at a rate vastly disproportionate to their peers. One lazy summer afternoon 4 years ago, I was sitting in the back seat of a car when I received a text on, one of those awkward flip phones. Thank God, something I left behind in middle school. From a friend of mine, and she had recently come out to her parents. The message was simple. I'm going to hell, God hates me, and my parents agree. It was in that moment that I knew that I needed to speak as a Christian, but of a different kind, who could offer a contrary voice to the ones that she and so many others were and are hearing. If people were going to advocate for hate in the name of God, then I needed to advocate as an equally strong voice for compassion. And I had to fight against the church of hate by being an active part of the church of love. I believe that we have been called to show compassion and to fight injustice, and that regardless of whether or not you believe in God, your acceptance of that call is what validates your identity as a Christian. What makes you a Christian is not the laundry list from before, but rather how you let your light shine by the compassion you show for others and the zeal with which you dissemble that which creates inequity. We are given a great example of how to be that kind of Christian in today's reading. While a first reading conveys the importance of generosity even when we do not have a lot to give, There's a deeper meaning that we can only understand by picking apart the context. When Kings was written, widows were considered outcasts from the general society. A wife couldn't work and relied on her husband and son to make money in order to put food on the table. Without her husband, however, a widow could barely survive, scraping by on what her son could make for the both of them. She had almost no rights and very little autonomy or independence. And like most women, her fate was tied and had always been tied to the men in her life. And in that moment that Elijah approached her, she and her son had run out of options. The food she gives to Elijah is her last. She and her son are planning on eating it, knowing that they will subsequently starve to death. But God, the same one that supposedly is a God that hates, has noticed that she is in need. And while I don't necessarily believe that there is a God who directly helps people in need, I do believe that this story is setting us an example to emulate. There are countless other examples of people who are subject to great injustices in the Bible being helped either by God or in God's name. The uplifting of one who is considered less than, the acknowledgement of their humanity, is the fundamental idea that drives, or at least should drive, Christianity. But simple acts of compassion do not on their own solve the world's problems. The revival of the widow's son, so that he may work to feed her, did not give her the right to work or restore her status in society. What compassion helps us to do, and why it's important, is to see how our fellow individuals are affected by the broader problems that cause inequity and injustice, and to see where the bigger fight is to be had. Even while we are sitting here in this church this morning, our fellow members of the human family, the people who are like the widow in this story, are bruised physically and verbally by a society that refuses to fight for them. When Jesus fought his fight in first century Palestine, he didn't do it to make everyone go to church on Sunday. He fought so that those around him, the people who lived in a society racked with fierce class, racial, and religious divisions, just like ours, would learn to be kind to one another and work towards bringing together the human family in mutual love and care. He fought with miracles and words and was killed by weapons by a society unwilling to accept one another. He did not succeed in his quest for unity and interconnectedness, but that's where we come in. This is the rest of our call to action. As Christians, as Jews, as Muslims, as atheists, as people in this world, we are called to end division with unity. It is not merely enough to help those who society has either deemed less than or cast out as the other. We as people must end the system of power that creates division and breeds the idea that hatred is and should be commonplace. And the hardest part, is that we have to fight against it without making enemies. Because in order to make a human family, we cannot create a new other. They too must have a place. But I believe that if we work to end the gross injustices in this world and fight for our fellow man, woman, or person of any gender variance, we can create the essence of what any religion actually seeks to create: a human family interconnected in our goal to take care of one another. Amen.